On today's photo moment, we're going to be looking at how to add a 1/4-20 socket to this PolarPro bracket so that I can add a 1/4-20 to my GoPro Hero 7. Welcome to PhotoJoseph's Photo Moment, the first live well, okay, this one's not live. Usually it's live, this one's not live, it's being played. Okay, this is a premiere. It's a new YouTube feature that I'm kind of playing with, and today's show requires a little bit of time compression, so I decided to record this earlier and then play it as a premiere. So if you're watching this live during the premiere, I am sitting in another room on the chat, able to interact with you. If you're not watching this live, then you can still follow along on the live chat that happened. It's kind of a cool thing that YouTube's doing. I've been playing with it. I like it. Now, that would mean that the Q&A, the normal Q&A is not going to be here, but guess what? It is. Just click up here, and that is going to take you to the Q&A. If you are watching this live, then that Q&A will go live right after this premiere is over. And if you're not watching it live, well, then that will just take you to where the Q&A was. That makes sense? Good. All right, let's get this thing going. So here's the backstory. I got myself a GoPro Hero 7. I'm so excited. It's my first GoPro. I've never needed one. I never had a really good reason for one, but this one has some pretty insane features, this whole hyperlapse, hyper smooth combination thing, and I'm going to take it to India with me, and I'm going to use it for long transitions of like walking through streets or getting in cars and driving to new locations or walking through the airport. I just think it could be a really cool video element. And so I wanted to have this thing where I could mount it onto a shoulder strap. I'll be carrying a backpack. I want to mount it here. Well, a friend of mine online recommended this thing called the PolarPro. It's pretty cool. This is a attachment, a little bracket that you attach to a strap of any type, and then it has this little guy here that snaps in. So this just snaps right in, one way or another. Probably have to undo that first. There we go. Snaps into place, locks that in, and this little piece here is, of course, the universal GoPro attachment. This is the case that comes with the GoPro. This attaches onto here. The GoPro goes inside of that, and off you go. So ideally, what you've got here is, once it's all together, as a shoulder strap or any kind of strap-mounted thing, I've got my camera sitting like this. Neat, right? Okay, cool. So that's all well and good. Now, the other thing I wanted to do is, I mentioned the car rides. In the car ride, I'm not going to have this on my shoulder strap. I want to mount this to a windshield or the dashboard or something like that. Well, I have this old suction mount. It's actually a Panasonic one from an action cam that they made years ago, but it's just a little suction mount with a obvious standard 1/4-20 thread on the top of that. Okay, so I got to put these things together. And I'm getting this all together, and I think, well, this is obvious. This bracket that comes with the GoPro has to have a 1/4-20 on it, right? And I'm like, oh. It doesn't. Look at the GoPro itself. There's no 1/4-20. How's that? Okay, I'm a first-time GoPro user, but that really surprised me. So there's no standard tripod socket on the GoPro or its default case. All right, well, you can buy one of these from a variety of companies, basically something like this that's got a 1/4-20 on the bottom. But I'm thinking, well, this is silly. I don't want to have yet another bracket. Ideally, I don't want to have to take this bracket off of this case ever, right? It should just go straight from my shoulder thing to my strap-mounted thing to the suction mount. So how do I do that? Well, I'm looking at this piece here. Now, first of all, let's just get a close-up look of this guy. This thing here remarkably resembles an Arca Swiss plate. This is an Arca Swiss plate, and I thought, oh, that's awesome. It's Arca Swiss. And I put it up, and it's not. Arca Swiss is just ever so slightly bigger. If you take a head that has an Arca Swiss mount on it, and I put this in here, and I tighten it down all the way, it doesn't. Unfortunately, that doesn't quite work. So that was a bit of a disappointment. I thought, man, what a lost opportunity. This thing should be just maybe a millimeter or so bigger on all sides, and then it would be Arca Swiss. So that's cool. It would be cool. It isn't. But the other thing is that this really should have a 1/4-20 socket on the bottom. I mean, look at the bottom of this thing. It is just this empty space. Imagine if that had a 1/4-20 in there. That would solve my problem. Okay, well, it turns out, well, I can't solve the Arca Swiss challenge because I can't make this bigger because then it wouldn't fit into this. Not that I even know how I would make it bigger, but if I could, it still wouldn't work. I can, perhaps, add a 1/4-20. And so that was the solution that I wanted to find. So I went to the hardware store, chatted with the hardware guys there. We looked at a few different solutions. And my initial thought was I would just drill through this and then have some type of 1/4-20 receiver on there and then bolt it down on the top. But I realized that that would be a problem because as the camera mount went on here, let's just kind of slide that into place, if there was a bolt poking up out of here, this would have issues, right? It would bump into it. So that is not going to work. So I can't have something sticking out through there, so I can't just drill a hole through and mount some type of quarter 20 receptacle into it. So we kept digging around, and here's what we came up with. I wish I could tell you what this thing is called. I don't know, but here's the part. This is the magic piece that we're going to use. I know what this is for. If you drill a hole into a piece of wood, you can then pop this into the wood, hammer it in, these little spiked feet dig into it, and then you now have a quarter 20 thread, quarter 20 receptacle on basically anything, any piece of wood or whatever you want to jam this into. We're going to use this upside down. I'm going to take this plate and this quarter 20 receiver, drop it in here, and glue it into place. Pretty straightforward. We're going to use really good glue. We're going to use some epoxy, really hard stuff. But we're not quite there yet. Take another look at the close-up here. If I just set this in as it is and glue it, look at how it sticks up just a little bit too high. See how it's sticking out on there? That's just, it's above the edge or would be below the bottom of this. And that's not going to work because I need to be able to mount this onto this plate, tighten it down, and so if something is sticking out of the bottom of there, that's not going to fit. Fortunately, if you look inside of this, it has these little ribs in here that can be sacrificed. And these ribs seem to be almost exactly, if not exactly, we're gonna call it close enough, to the remaining distance that I've got on this thing. So the idea is I'm going to take some snips here, cut that out, grab some needle nose pliers, rip the pieces out of there, take this thing, glue it in, just drop it in there with a drop of cement, get that into place, and then I'm gonna fill the outside area completely with epoxy just to really solidify it in. I think that's gonna work. One of the other things I'm going to do is I'm gonna take a quarter 20 bolt and thread that into here, before I before I glue this in, so that I don't accidentally put it in and then fill the hole with cement and not be able to put anything into it. So this is gonna go in. Once it's marginally in place, I'm going to take that out to make sure that it doesn't get cemented in. And hopefully, if all goes to plan, I will have a nicely locked in little bolt here that will allow me, or receiver that will allow me to put this onto a tripod. Sounds kind of cool, right? So let's get going. Cue the time lapse. Really close. It's sticking up just a little bit farther than I want it to. I'm gonna try and get in there. I'm trying to really get these little ribs out. They're still ridging up a little bit. Can't really get quite the right angle. I don't have a Dremel. I need a Dremel. Don't have one, but we'll get there. Just a little bit more. I'm really grasping at straws here. I'm just trying to get this last little layer down. I don't even know what this is, some crazy steel wool-like thing, but it really isn't working. I need a Dremel. You know what? I think it's good enough. It's a tiny hair over, but I think it's gonna be okay. All right, now that I've gotten this thing completely filthy and you wanna have a clean surface to epoxy things too, I'm gonna go clean this up. I'll be right back. Of course, now I have to wait for it to completely dry. Well, I think that's about as good as we're gonna get. So now it's time to put the epoxy together. Let's see, make sure I don't forget to put this bolt in here. And put some gloves on so I don't end up with sticky fingers. Look at the epoxy blending. I'm actually going to mount this whole thing on my little stand here to keep it upright. Let's get rid of this little bit of drip here. And now I'm just going to let that sit for 4 or 5 minutes, and then I'll take this thread out, take the bolt out, and fill it in, and we'll see what happens. Well, it is moving. I probably shouldn't, but I want to get the bolt out of there. My biggest concern, of course, is that it seizes in there. It can't come out. That would be bad. I'm just going to go ahead and fill in the whole outside area. I might have totally screwed this up, but I'm just going to fill it in on the outside and hope for the best. I think it's going to work. I've now squeezed this entire tube of epoxy into there. It's still open inside. It hasn't filled up. I think we might have it. At this point, that's going to sit around for a long time to dry because it takes like 4 or 5 minutes to set, but I don't think they meant for the entire bottle into one small space. So we're just going to walk away for a little while, all right? We'll come back. It's been about an hour or so. I think it's, let's just see, shall we? It's like it looks kind of goopy. Ooh. It's hard. It may be done. All right, let's see if I can still thread this in, because if I can't, then the whole thing is for nothing. Yep, that goes in. Okay. Maybe, it's definitely got some goop in there because it doesn't go in very far. It doesn't have to go in far, does it? Did get a little bit on the plastic. Well, I'm probably gonna have to scrape that off. Yeah, let's get rid of that because otherwise it may not slide into here, which I'm not gonna slide it in right now anyway because that is just a little bit tacky, but let's see if we can get rid of that. Good. All right, moment of truth. Let's see if I can thread that onto there. That's good. That's tight. It worked. Yes. Again, not perfect. There's a little bit, it sticks out a little bit farther than it should, but I mean, it's fine. It's going to hold it. It's going to hold it. That's all that matters. All right, well, now I'm just going to leave this thing unsullied and let it just sit here and dry completely for a day or two. But that is fantastic. Okay, so PolarPro, if you're watching this, well, I think this would be a good upgrade, right? Just make this a little bit bigger, make it Arca Swiss compatible, put a 1/4 thread on the bottom, and I think this would be pretty good. So if you haven't seen the product yet, let's take a quick look at the product page. It's available on Amazon. It's only 30 bucks. So if you have a need to strap a GoPro to anything, the idea here is that you can just attach this to any type of strap, right? This thing here threads open, take one of these out completely, and now I can put this on anything kind of that thick or so. So there we go. So we take this, wrap that around something, lock that down. And so I've already tested it on the backpack that I'm going to be taking. You can fit a nice big thick strap through that, no problem at all. So yeah, this is going to be awesome. This will allow me to mount this, and now I can take this off, put it straight onto my suction mount, mount it onto a car windshield, and away we go. Right on. All right, guys, as you saw earlier, if you are watching this live or not live, either way, but if you want to participate in the Q&A live, that is going to be a separate video. Click on the eye up there. It'll open up the link. Jump over there. We'll be starting that live Q&A in just a moment. And of course, if you are not watching live, then you can still click on that, and it'll still take you to the Q&A. We'll be right back.